Here on Alex Guerra Podcasting, it is one leg up once again. And I mentioned this is the Alex Guerra Podcast Network. And one of my colleagues and friends that support this network, I've wanted to have him on for a while now. He is the producer for Wilcow on the Salem News Channel. But more importantly, on his outside life, he's a award-winning directing screenwriter and director in the film world. Christian Caputo, welcome, Mr. Award winner. Thanks for joining my podcast.
Thank you for having me on the Alex Garrett Podcasting Network. You could also hear Wilcow live at 5 every day, Monday through Friday, on the Salem News Channel. You can find it on Roku and all your other streaming services. That's a cheap plug right there.
Love it, love it. Well, tell me about what you're doing, because you are an award-winning screenwriter and director, and I know you're looking for the Triple Crown of film. But tell us where you're at right now and what awards you've won.
So I've been writing the script I've been writing it for the last 10 years, but the character has an embryonic stage back to when I was a kid. Grammar school, I used to write stories narratively, and I used to act them out with my friends. Every school year would be a season of the quote-unquote show that I made up. And the character just evolved from the end of grammar school, evolved into high school, and then I decided about 10 years ago to start writing this. And it was just on and off I would start writing. And then COVID hit. And since we were doing nothing for five months in New York while everything was shut down, I decided, let me really sit down and write this. So within that 5-month period, I wrote a 10-episode pilot, which got whittled down to 8 episodes. Took a break from it, started editing it, showed it to a bunch of my friends. Last year when I started here, I got some concept art done. And then right in the middle of last year, I decided, let me see if I can get some awards and stuff. So I put into some film festivals, had to wait a while. But back in, I think October, it's the first award I got, which was out in California, which was the LA Neo-Noir Novel, Film, and Script Online Festival, which was an award winner. And then back in December, last month, I got Best Fantasy Screenplay for Bridgefest.
Well, let me ask you about this, because obviously you did all this editing as a screenwriter, right? How much editing does that take? I mean, you've got to sort of conceptualize this on screen as you're writing it, right?
Well, there's always, there's a saying, I don't know which director or screenwriter said this, but there's always the script that you visualize in your head, the script that you write down, the script that you edit, and then the script that you shoot. Mm-hmm. So editing-wise, it takes a while. Like, you could sit there and you can just stare at a screen, at a blank screen.
And you storyboard it, right? Or...
Yeah, well, you storyboard it, especially in your head. Like, you have to storyboard it out and make sure different shots in your head. Because 9 times out of 10, the screenwriter doesn't direct the film, but I like to write and direct my own stuff.
Well, let me ask you about that, because I feel like screenwriters to this day, even though Hollywood's kind of changing to streaming, is it not? I mean, we're seeing that more so than maybe the theater sometimes, but there's always going to be the screenwriters that, I don't want to say want to sell themselves off, but want to sell the script and get it made. But I don't feel like you're like that. I don't feel like you're going out trying to sell the scripts you write, right?
No, this script definitely, this year, my goal is to at least find someone to at least buy it, in the sense of, like, I want a company like Netflix or Hulu or something to at least buy the script, to at least be able to sit there and be, I want to be showrunner. I want to be in charge of this. Not necessarily direct it, but I want to be the guy that makes the decisions, to hire the director, be in charge of who's the casting.
It sounds like this one is going to be like a project that you've been waiting on for a while, as you've been saying. So why does it mean so much? What about the storyline impacts you that you want to take full throttle charge of this, if you will?
You know, there's something. There's directors out there. All writers tell you, number one, not to put yourself in the script. And of course, you know, novelist Stephen King, he actually put himself, Stephen King, in one of his stories, which is hilarious, but that's a side note there. But for me, it's just a personal character. The character's me, not to a T, but it's what I always pictured myself to be if I was an actor, being like this big, it's not superhero, but it's like a superhero-esque.
Well, you're writing all of this and you're directing. You're taking risks because who knows if someone's going to pick this up. So what keeps you going every day to keep writing and to keep trying to make this out there more, if you will? Like, what wakes you up every morning in the filmmaking world, if you will?
Just a motivation that it's like, I know it's a great story. I know that if someone would just give me a chance to do it, I think I can knock it out of the park. It's like Star Wars. It's like Star Wars. No one wanted Star Wars, and look how big it got.
As you're dealing with the award-winning days, you have a lot of friends and family alongside you here and at home. So what's it mean to have that network of your own getting you through these award-winning days?
Oh, my family just supports me 100%. Sometimes it doesn't come off like that, but that's with every filmmaker, media personality. There's always that, really, you want to get into that? But there's no safety net, there's no backup. But my family's my biggest support. My friends just support me. I always sit them down and I go, no, you have to sit here, you have to listen to my crazy scripts and my stories. And they're fun, because just to see the look on their face, if there's something crazy or just like they like something, their eyes light up, and you always sit there, you go, oh, that's working.
I always find that the average screenwriter takes experiences of their own lives or things they see on an everyday basis. Are you that type too, that like, oh my gosh, this is interesting what I just saw, let me see how I can incorporate it into my script?
Well, definitely there's something in, not the pilot script, but there's something in one of the later episodes that I wrote that was definitely impacted by COVID. Definitely, I was like, well, we're all sitting here in quarantine. And there is like a quarantine type of scene in one of the scripts, and I was using that as the backdrop of an episode.
Well, speaking of quarantine, I don't know how many friends you have in the film world, but a lot of actors were sort of cut down at the knees, if you will. They couldn't really do much of that acting that they love, and they had to be homebound. Did you find that with your friends that were in that realm?
Yeah, I had a whole bunch of actresses that I knew were just like, they were in the middle of shooting feature films, or they were just in the middle of like close to getting their big break, and their legs just got chopped. I know for me, like, definitely, like, I was on the verge of like getting a job so similar to this, and it just got chopped right at the knees. But you know what? Everything happens for a reason. I'm glad I'm here too.
Now, do you podcast about this, or are we hearing the first time from Christian Caputo, the award winner?
No, this is the first. This is the first. You got your scoop right here, Alex, on the Alex Garrett Podcasting Network.
But you obviously are on here also to say a message that, sort of pick up the script. So what is your message to those that might be listening in the industry? Not that I don't know if they are, but if they are, what's your message?
You know what? Just keep going. I mean, a year ago when you and I were sitting in Master Control, having a good time laughing, I had no clue a year later I'd be sitting here producing a live television show every day, Monday through Friday for a week. So, I mean, you just keep going. Never, don't take no for an answer. Just push. And I gotta tell you, like, if you have a camera or if you have something, shoot anything possible.
You have an IMDb, and I think that's pretty cool. I'm sure you're aware of that as well. Mm-hmm. So, when you're on IMDb, I feel like you've kind of made it in the industry, haven't you?
Oh, when I first got my first credit, I wasn't expecting it. I just looked up my name one day on like.
And what was the credit? Tell us.
Oh, it was for my first film out of film school called Mind Vision, and that was a 2-day shoot, and hottest day of the year. And
you weren't at the New York Film Academy? Which?
No, I went
school?
I went to the Art Institute.
Okay, that's a pretty reputable place too. So, did you find that was competitive, or were you kind of all supporting each other?
It depends on who you would talk to. Like there was a lot of competitiveness in that school, but then at the same time, everyone realized you were competitive, but you had to support each other.
Now, I know that you I know that you have this Triple Crown that you want to get in awards. Tell us that third ring, if you will.
I would love to get a award-winning producer role, because I have the award-winning filmmaker, I have the award-winning screenwriter, and I'm just like, if I could get that producer, that'd be a nice little.
When you're younger, you either know if you want to be in front of a camera or in front of a microphone or behind. I feel like you're more behind the scenes guy. So what made you? Did you ever want to be in front of the camera on microphone, or was it always behind the scenes for you?
So, I love telling this story. So when I was 4, I was sitting in the movie theater. I was watching my earliest, to my knowledge, my earliest movie experience was one of the Star Trek films. And I remember sitting there in movie theater, just being so enamored by the screen. And I remember asking my mom, like, at 4, if you can believe it, at 4, asked my mom, how is this done? How is this made? And she's like, it's a director. She was explaining it to me in like the simplest way, and I was like, that's what I want to do. It also helps that my uncle had a camera with him all the time, and if you look at all my home movies, even when I was a baby, crawling or just barely walking, I was just always staring at that camera. Like there's something about the camera that just drew me to it.
And then I think you said you have a video of you actually grabbing the camera,
Yes.
right, at one point.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, there's a video of me grabbing the camera. And he gave me my first camera. He gave me my first 2 cameras, my uncle.
Well, it is kind of cool. So you like sort of not only directing, but do you like the videography? Do you ever do videography as well, or?
Sometimes. I mean, it's easier for me to tell someone direct than actually like. But then sometimes I have this thing where it's like I'm terrible at describing things sometimes. So it's like sometimes it's easier for me to like show. But I sometimes being behind the camera is difficult. Being in front of the camera is even more difficult because I'll forget lines and people will say to me, "But you wrote this." I'd be like, "Yeah."
Well, I forget what it is, but they have those. I'm waiting for the little tam that those directors always wear. Those hats that they wear. I'm waiting for that, and your high director's chair. Where is that?
I have a hat, and I want to get one of those eyepieces where I forget what it's called. I have to look it up, but where you can actually like, it's basically a lens that you can look through the shot to see exactly like how you would visualize the shot, and you could show people. I still have to get that.
Well, as a screenwriter, you have to know the camera work as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to. Do you specify? Okay, shoot it at this angle, shoot it at that angle, like a storyboard almost.
Normally, that's not what a filmmaker or a screenwriter would do in a script, because usually that's responsibility for the director and the cinematographer. But if there is something really important in the script that you're trying to convey, like a POV shot or something specific that has to draw the narrative forward, then yeah, you would definitely put a camera shot in there.
Is it me, or has streaming made sort of the art of screenwriting and directing and filmmaking in general? Has it made it more accessible to people that may not have all the big funding, like of a movie house, if you will, or a production house?
Definitely. For example, my friends over at Fuzz on the Lens, they helped out with Terrifier. And 10 years ago, I don't think Terrifier would be in the movie theater, but they got a big following on streaming, and then they got into the movie theaters at a limited release, and then it became one of the highest grossing independent films of last year.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, I've familiarized myself with that movie, but as we're talking about this, you want to be on Netflix, Yahoo, so are you noticing the trends? Like, okay, well, Netflix has this kind of budget, or for Netflix originals. Are you noticing those types of trends?
I think narratively, right now, the theater experience is overproduced by a lot of the superhero films. So I think it's kind of hard for you to like get into the movies if you're not Marvel or DC or any of the big studios like Warner Brothers and Lucasfilms. Streaming, for me, I think you're able to tell a narrative story, whether it be a series, a lot easier. Like this script that I wrote started out as a feature film, and then I realized the story's too big, and I figured it'd be a couple of films. But then I thought to myself, what if the first film doesn't do good? So I figured narratively tell the story in 8 episodes would be a lot easier on a streaming service than it would be in a theatrical experience.
And I know that's changing too. I don't notice how many episodes are on TV anymore. I feel like they're trying to keep it going, but everybody's so directed to Netflix and all these and Apple TV now that the CBS specials or the NBC specials, they're not really being produced as much, no?
Oh yeah, like 20 years ago or 10 years ago, a season was 24 episodes, and it would be you would do half a season, you'd do like a month break, which would probably be like December, and then you do the rest of the season until June, and then you take the summer off to shoot whatever. You would have your sweeps week, you would have all this other stuff. Now it's 10 episodes in and out. And sometimes I know my parents go crazy. They go, it's 10 episodes, and you forget exactly the next season what happens.
Well, Christian, I will say this real quick. I am glad that I had you on today. And also, I would say that Seinfeld would not have been as, how do I say, familial, or everybody wouldn't have gathered around the television like they did if it were on streaming. So that's how much the game's changed.
Yeah, definitely. Like shows like that. I know back in the 80s when like the big show was MASH. I know when that ended, that was like the highest grossing finale where like it literally stopped. Everyone didn't even go to the bathroom. That's a true story. And then you had the other big finale. Well, not the finale, but Dallas, Who Shot JR. Those
Right.
are big like landmark events that I don't think you could replicate today. Very rarely would you be able to replicate it today on streaming.
MASH. I mean, I know MASH is also.
Well, the big show now, I think, is like Stranger Things.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That's the show that's getting everyone. And then recently, for me, I was watching House of the Dragon, which is
Okay.
basically the next big Game of Thrones show.
Real quick, Knives Out's kind of made a big splash now. Is that both TV and streaming? Or
Yeah.
Oh, it's a combination.
Yeah. Now,
right?
especially during COVID was definitely a lot of the movie theaters and studios were trying to get their movies to do simultaneous releases on streaming and theatrical. Everyone has an opinion about it. I think if you have a feature film, I think it should be, and it's specifically for a theatrical release, I think you should have a theatrical release depending on what the box office is.
Favorite, because they do mention credit, but that's the other about screenwriting is they're not always credited at the end of the movie. But
Yeah.
famous favorite screenwriter that you have, or favorite style of writing that you've seen on the big screen that you want to emulate?
Well, definitely I was really influenced by George Lucas. I know it's a controversial statement to say. George Lucas. I think great screenwriters like Quentin Tarantino. Off the top of my head, I can't
Will
think
we
right
seeing
now.
a dance scene then? Like, will we saying?
Oh yeah, no. My whole script has feet. That's the big no. But definitely George Lucas was a big influence on me in terms of visual and narrative storytelling, and definitely behind the scenes with his shooting with miniatures. That's a big filmmaking goal of mine, is to shoot with miniatures.
Well, I want to have you back on.
Yes.
So, what's your goal between now and our next podcast? Because whenever you get accomplished next, tell me what we'll get you after that next accomplishment. So.
Right now, we're working on an animatic for the script, and at that point, I have a pitch deck already. Sometime between this year, I want to get an entertainment lawyer or an agent to get this script out there to be sold. Maybe June, maybe.
And how much money are you investing in this right now out of your own personal? Because you're not being funded by anybody right now.
It costs what it costs. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, I'm proud that you're making the strides you are. I mean, you made strides here at Salem,
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
feel like it's up and up from here, right? So,
Yeah, it's all uphill. I mean, I don't like to settle. I like to achieve goals that I put in front of myself, and it doesn't matter how long it takes. It took me 10 years to get here at this point. So if it takes another 10 to get the script out, it's so be it.
I really appreciate you coming on today. We finally got this interview done.
I know, we've
Christian,
been doing this
so-
for like 2 weeks. You've been hounding me, chasing me
Yes.
down. I'm having papers in my hand to produce my regular daily show, and you're like, we got to do the interview. So I'm glad I'm here. I always love cheap pops and shilling for myself.
Well, I love our friendship, dude. So
Yes.
always welcome to come by and let us know what's up next.
Yeah, I love it. Right here on the Alex Garrett Podcasting Network.
And indeed, yeah, I couldn't say it better myself. That's Christian Caputo, One Leg Up with Christian Caputo. We'll be back with you soon on the Alex Garrett Podcast Network.